Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Buy Round Interview Show. Now today I am joined by a man that it's hard to get an introduction for. I've spoke to a number of his former teammates that say he's the toughest person that they've ever met, and that's not even going over the fact he's a Hall of Famer, Dally M Prop of the Year 4 times in a row, a 4-time Premiership winner as well. But I think the greatest compliment is the loyalty and toughness that your former teammates speak in such high regard about you, Shane Webcke. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, mate. My challenge is trying to understand you with that thick English accent you've got.
Mate, I've turned. I'm very...
You've what? See, there you go. We're there already.
We're there already. The confused. Well, mate, if you just want to speak, I'll just pretend. We can insert some questions in later. What's filling the time at the moment? Because, again, speaking to some former teammates, a little bit of research on you as well, a newsreader, which Gordon Tallis...
he'd have been very kind about that, wouldn't he?
Very kind. Yeah. He laughs about that. Pub owner as well, farmer.
No, well, I sold. We had a pub many years ago. I bought the pub in my hometown for any number of reasons. But anyway, the novelty of losing money wore off, so we sold it. But I'm fairly simple sort of bloke. I played my footy career, and then I was lucky enough to fall into a media career at the other end of it, which entailed working for Channel 7, which I still do to this day. That's reading the sport here in Queensland. The other thing that I do quite a bit of is I do a lot of safety talks around mines and that, because my dad was killed in a workplace accident 30-odd years ago now. And interspersed with all of that is my one true love, and that's farming. I grew up on a small sheep property in southwestern Queensland, well, southeast Queensland rather, and that's everything I've ever done has been propelling me toward, hopefully one day, that being the only thing that I do. I keep busy with all of that. And of course, I've got 3 kids and a wife, and so all the things that normal people have got. It's good. I've been very lucky, mate. I've been very fortunate with the things that have happened in my life.
Yeah. Do you do anything within the game anymore?
No, I don't, and that's not by design or purposely. I developed all these other things that I do, and I get very, very busy with them. That said, from time to time, I've been to all the grand finals since I retired with Channel 7. So I've been in and around the game, and naturally, because of my career with the Broncos, I'm a life member there. So you're always invited to everything. So I'm not one of these blokes, and they do exist who are for whatever reason finish the game and then get a bit cranky about it and things like that. I have no cans to kick. Rugby League has been just simply the most important thing outside of my family and that's happened in my life, and it's given me everything that I've got. So I'm incredibly loyal to the game. I'll be a servant to it whenever it wants me. And in that, so I always try, whenever I'm asked to do something in and around the game and Men of League and things like that, I always try to if I'm going to put time back into the game through those avenues, because our game is a lot of things, but it's a vehicle, if you like, that a lot of people, myself included, and a lot of young men just like me, used to build our lives, and not necessarily going and have a professional career. The ethics and that you get taught from being a rugby league player, and you know this, from being a young boy. It doesn't matter if you go on to play professionally. The things that it teaches you about there are things more important than yourself. That's the beauty of our game, and that's the beauty, in fact, of all team sport.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's so many lessons and skills that you take away from playing team sport, and especially rugby league at a young age. And I think back to some of those volunteers that they weren't giving up their time, their most valuable commodity, not to see us play in the Super League or the NRL or for our country or for your state. They were doing it to make us better people.
Absolutely, and it was just a big part of our family life, mate. All my oldest friends in this world are the kids I played junior footy with out in the bush, and that will always be the case. And if I'm grateful to the fact that I was a rugby league player, it's not so much related to my professional career, which I'm incredibly grateful to have had, but that I grew up in the game, in the place that I grew up, with the blokes I grew up with, in an era when big stable families and a stable sort of world. Didn't have a lot of the stuff we got now. Didn't have social media. Didn't have mobile telephones. the world was a much simpler place, and I'm glad that I grew up in that. I mean, I'm not stuck in the mud either, wishing that nothing's ever changed. It's not a case of that. But my best memories are mired in those periods.
Yeah, I agree. I'm exactly the same. Those connections that you make, they last a lifetime. Hey, you say you get to every grand final. What do you make of the one just gone?
Oh, jeepers creepers. I'm like everybody. So I'm a fan now, as well as, having played there. But firstly, I'm a fan. And like everybody, as it scored his third try, I'm thinking, we're home. You do not lose from here. But we did. And I think, I feel, and I went down the sheds afterwards, and obviously good mates with Kevy and all the rest of it, and I felt enormously for him because, you played in a grand final here. You know how hard they are to make, and even harder to win them. To get that close, and that game was won, all bar that the other mob, And that, I think if I can offer my humble summation of it, we were so bad in the opening 20-odd minutes. We were so bad, and we did so much defence. And if Flegler doesn't score that try in half-time, the grand final is lost there and then. But he scores at half-time. We go into the shed, and it's like when you've been that bad and you've held onto it, but then you score a try right on half-time and you go in at that 8-6 or whatever it was, you know that you're in this. And I was not surprised when they came back out and really started to put the foot to the floor. And then, of course, Ezra weaves his individual magic, and all of a sudden we're where we were. Penrith were always coming back. They were always going to come back because they're too good a side not to. And what they threw at us at the end wasn't that spectacular. But my theory is that we were out of juice because the amount we used up at the front end of that game, we should have been able to combat what they came back with, that last late surge. We should have been able to combat that better, but I think we were buggered. And so things that we normally would have repelled didn't get repelled. And then, we see Cleary score that try, and that was heartbreaking.
Mate,
it was shattering. You know what? And in the fullness of time, those boys will understand what they lost on that day, because when you get to the end of your career, is only when you realise. Like, I was lucky enough to be part of 4 premierships with the Broncos, and when you're in them and you win them, it's great. It's wonderful. You don't understand what you've really done. That only comes with as you get older and you look back and reflect and think, bloody hell, it was hard getting there, even harder to win them, and we did it 4 times. So these blokes, if they don't get that opportunity again, and I think they will, and I hope they do, we'll look back on that and realise the opportunity that was lost. And I guess that's the difficult part about professional sport. The rewards are huge, and when it goes the other way, that's huge as well.
Yeah, everybody's so emotionally and physically 100% all in and invested in that outcome. And I've been part of losing grand final teams more than I'd care to admit, but the pain doesn't go away.
I don't understand it, mate, because I've never lost one.
No, well...
Anyway, I don't want to talk about that, but yeah.
Well, look,
not even in juniors. Never. Never.
Well, mate, consistency was an attribute of yours as well as that loyalty. But I want to just drill into the mindset, because you played in the toughest position and the hardest position to be consistently good at. So I want to get into a little bit. Was it physical preparation? Was it a mindset? Was it a psyche? How did you have the ability to maintain that circling around the top prop in the game for almost a decade?
Well, it's pretty easy, mate. It's routine. It is easy.
Yeah.
It is easy. And we're both front rowers, so let's not overstate what playing front row is. It is not difficult, right? It's a simple job that you have to do. And once you accept that and forget about, let's not fall in love with ourselves and overstate what we do. What we do is simple. Get the ball, go forward. When they run at you, knock them over. And that's really what we have to do. Once you trim it down to that, it becomes very, very simple. The other thing that I learned very early in my career was routine. And I did pretty much the same thing every week in, week out. The thing about routine takes an enormous amount of discipline. But once you muster the discipline to have routine, you can be consistent. And look, to be fair, my level of consistency didn't mean that I had to be brilliant, and because I wasn't, and I wasn't in possession. I wasn't in possession of a hell of a lot of skill, mate. I could work hard, and so I understood that, and that's what I did. Now that translated into a good career for me. Lucky for me, there was plenty of blokes I played with who worked just as hard and who were just as consistent. And these are the vagaries of our game, if you like. But if I was consistent, it was because every week of my career I did the same things, and that's boring as batshit.
What were those same things then? So,
well,
can you talk to us about?
I'll give you the greatest example of something that I discovered, right? And this is probably the thing that gave me my footy career. We used to do this run out here in Brisbane. It was the Gap Reservoir. So it's a bit of state forest. It's 10,000 or 15,000 acres, whatever it was. And so it was a 10-kilometre run. The first part of which was these couple of massive hills. So it went up about 1,500 metres in 1,500 metres. So even climb. And it was a hellishly difficult run, particularly when fresh from the bush, where in bush rugby league in Australia, like if you get tired of training, you pull up and have a little rest because there's no sheep stations getting played for, and that was just how it was. Anyway, so when I first arrived at the Broncos, there was a raw bone country kid. We go to do this run, and the first bit there was a bit that went for about 600 or 700 metres, and there was a little saddle in the middle, like a little flat bit before you climbed again. It was a natural place for a country kid like me to have a little rest. So one of your countrymen, Kelvin Giles, who really changed the way that fitness was viewed. He was our fitness coach of the Broncos at the time, and he changed the way that strength and conditioning was done in the NRL or Winfield Cup, whatever it was then. And he knew this about country kids, and he was standing in some bush right to the side there, and he jumped out. And I will not use the language he used in assuring us that at the Broncos, when you got tired, you didn't stop. You didn't stop. So that was in my head, and a few things. This is a long story, and I'm cutting it short, but months later, for different reasons, and this I'm telling this the wrong way because as a result of what happened to my dad, I had a break away from the game and then came back. And I wondered whether I could actually make it because my career had started, and I'd gone through this, not being able to run properly and all this sort of stuff, right? So anyway, I come back to Brisbane and we're doing this run again, and what I decided is in the off season. Actually, let me go back and tell this story properly, because to tell this properly is to say how it all happened, right? So if I go back a step, I was scouted to play for the Broncos because Wayne Bennett went to Toowoomba to watch a grand final, to watch a bloke called Stephen Price play. And he didn't sign Stephen Price, he signed me. I tell that story everywhere because Pricey wanted to be a Bronco, blah, blah, blah. But it was just one of those things. There's no slight on Price. He went to Canterbury and had a wonderful career, as we all know. But anyway, so I ended up at the Broncos. Now, I wasn't the atypical bloke who's going to become a footballer. I wanted to be a farmer, I wanted to be a shearer, I wanted to do all this sort of stuff. I really didn't want to be a footballer, and that's because of a lot of things. I was always good enough at the game, playing it. I played it all my life, but I never made Queensland rep side, stuff like that. The first Queensland side I played in was the Queensland State of Origin side. So, big deal. But the thing was, I love footy. And anyway, this particular day, this grand final in Toowoomba, I had to beg my mother and father to let me play because I'd been sick. I mean, really sick during the.
How old were you?
This was when we were under 18, so we would have been 17, and I had to beg mum and dad to let me play because I'd been bloody crook, and to the point I think I even spent a night in hospital that week.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
but you know what? Sorry, just to interject. Even thinking back to the person you are, like having the respect to even ask your parents, because I reckon a lot of kids today would be like, "I'm playing." At 17,
but I mean,
it's quite respectful that. Like,
but I was still living at home there. I was still under their rules. It was natural.
I know, but it's not so natural anymore. Yeah.
Anyway, that's
go on.
Old school.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we sorted that out and I played. And I don't really remember the games that long ago. And I don't know what Wayne saw. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Anyway, so that lands me with this opportunity. But here's the thing. Like a bloke like Pricey, right? He always made the Queensland sides and he was always going to be a footballer. And so those blokes do their research. They know what's coming. They have some idea of, if you go to a Sydney club, what that's going to look like. Me, hadn't thought about it. But one thing I did know, this is an opportunity that I once had lusted after and had gone away from, but I knew 1,000 blokes who wanted it. And I thought, this has fallen in my lap. So I respected that, right? I respected the notion of that. Probably the next mistake I made. So I have to go to Brisbane, and I'm a serious bush kid from a very small town. So I had to go to Brisbane, which is a bit of a shock. But then the next mistake I made is I moved in with my best mate, who was also from the small town and grew up beside us. And we've been best mates all our lives. Anyway, so we moved down there, and his brother was living in this place as well. And I'll never forget it because it's the first time we were really all been out of home and free and all the rest of it. So you know what that means. All the things that we'd never really done or seen, that's what we were doing. And I remember the joint we first landed at, you'd knock on the door and a cockroach would answer it. It wasn't great. Anyways, and so I'd transferred to my job and I'd started, on this footy career. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea whatsoever. But I remember I knew it was serious, but you remember. So we're all getting paid fortnightly in our jobs and not getting paid much. So on the fortnight that we got paid, we go to the pub and we drink all our money, and we'd have just enough left over to buy the barest of groceries to get us through for the next fortnight. And we just had this boom bust life, like all young people do.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly conducive to a first grade rugby league career, if you like. And we were drinking too much, blah blah blah, all the things you shouldn't do. But what I would do is I would run. I would go on these runs during the week by myself, and because I knew it was important in my head what I'd been afforded, this opportunity. So I was trying to be respectful of that, but I just didn't know. I couldn't equate that drinking for 4 nights in the week wasn't good for it. I didn't understand that, and I know that sounds stupid, but that's how naive I was. Anyway, so we start playing. I get to the club, and the job I was in at the time, in a bank, didn't allow me to get to training on time. And so I was always late to train, but I didn't care about that because training would start and then I wouldn't, because I was so shy. I didn't want to talk to any of them. Because you can remember, this is the Alan Langers, Glenn Lazarus of this world, all training in these things, and I was just as nervous as, and I really didn't want to be part of it. Like I was that frightened of it all. Anyway, so get through that, go through, pre-season training. That's when I discovered how I couldn't run up the hill, right? So it was during that first pre-season. And this is in 1994. And so then we start playing. And we were playing as a first grade side. We're only Colts then, so call it under 19s. And we were playing as a first grade side in the Brisbane Rugby League, so the Brisbane competition, which meant we were playing with men. And it was good. It was good for us. Anyway, so I got through this first bit. I was always a bloke who'd like in the bush when we were playing, I'd go to footy and just play. Did not think about it. You know why? Because I just loved it. And I thought, well, this is what I love footy.
Don't overcomplicate.
Didn't even think
this
about
player's going to do X, Y, Z.
Did not think about any of that. Didn't even care who we were playing. Just turned up because we were playing with mates and loved it. So anyway, and this is a real lesson in what not to do, because I then thought, okay, I'm playing for the Broncos now. And I wasn't really playing for the Broncos. I was playing for a feeder club, but in a Broncos jersey. And I thought, right, this is important now. This is proper footy. Now you've got to be serious. So apart from, where I was always just this easy going bloke and just going to the footy. So my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife for almost 30 years, she'd be sitting in the car. I wouldn't talk to her because I was game face on. Go get to the game, get the game. And it's like when you try to hold on to something too tight, it starts to slip through your fingers. So that's what started to happen. Whatever they saw in me that day in Toowoomba, I was not bringing to the table. And Wayne would say this if you asked him, Bennett that is, he'd say that halfway through that year, they'd given up on me because they realised they'd made a mistake. Because I was trying too hard and I wasn't, nothing I showed them that he thought he saw in me, none of that was coming out. And you know what? I thought, okay, this is not me. And halfway through that first year, I'm thinking, well, this just isn't going to be me. And then on the 21st of June 1994, at 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone rings. And it was my mum. And she'd rung to say that Dad had been killed. And my life changed. And life is about perspective, and my perspective changed that day. I forgot everything and went home. And it's the most tumultuous period in my life to date. And because we had to do a lot of things on our farm and different things. And anyway, all of that's another story. But I got to the other side of that when we buried Dad and all the rest of it. You remember, I was 19 years old. Or 20, whatever I was. It was a hell of a shock, and it ripped our family apart. And he was killed in a very, very nasty accident. Anyway, got to the other side of that. I decided I wasn't coming back because I thought, well, this isn't working. It's just not working. So I went to my mother with this plan, and I floated that I was going to stay home and look after the farm, which was entirely. My dad was killed working away from our farm because we couldn't make any money from it. It was at the time that we had in those times rather, and drought and all this sort of stuff. So Dad was working away. That's why he was killed in an industrial accident. It wasn't killed on our farm. So I came to Mum with this plan, and this is immaturity. And I go to Mum and I said, Mum, I'm going to stay home. We're going to look after the farm. And Mum goes, I don't think that sounds like a good idea. I said, well, Mum, I reckon it does. And she said, no, I don't think it does, blah, blah. And that's an entirely normal conversation between mother and son, except when, her husband, my father, has been killed in this awful accident. In the end, Mum said, well, listen, you can do what you want to do, but you won't be doing it here. Now, yeah, exactly. Tough love, if you want to call it that. However,
that's incredible.
Well, I was very immature about that, though. I was very immature. I took that personally. And years later, and not many years later, but Mum said, and I knew this by then, because I'd apologised because I had the shits about it. Don't worry about that. And Mum said, well, listen, I could not let you do that. She said, all I wanted you to do was to stay. Because she said, I was frightened, alone, and my brother had already gone back to work because he had a career, blah, blah, blah. And so she said, all I wanted you to do was to stay, but I could not let that be because one day it would come back to haunt you one way or the other. And there's a generation of people. There's a generation of people we should respect and admire because that ability to put other people first is a dying thing.
Man.
But that's what Mum did for me. Anyway, that sends me back to Brisbane, right? Now, though, with a completely different perspective. I knew rugby league wasn't the most important thing in the world. I'd just gone through losing what was one of the most important things in the world to me. It's obviously family and my dad. Mm. And so I went back to playing footy for the same reason I always played footy. I just turned up and I played. And guess what? Whatever they thought they saw came back. To the extent, by the end of the season, I started, and you'll understand what this is like at the start of your career when you enter the bottom realms of professionalism. Well, if you start to cause people to notice you, well, you'll read your name in the paper, and that's what started to happen. And at one point, I think Tony Durkin might have wrote it, a player to watch for the future, Shane Webcke, and I read this, and my thought processes were changing by then because I got to the end of the season, and I thought, well, plan B's gone. Going home is not going to be happening, so I've got to make this work. So I get to the end of the season, and that, to be honest, when I started to read in the paper about perhaps being someone that could get there, it lit a fire in me to think that maybe I could. But I didn't know what to do. I did not know what to do because I was too shy to go and ask anyone at the club. What's the next step? Okay, I've improved. How do I improve more to keep going? So I didn't ask anyone, but what I had in my head was that hill, because in my mind that was my real failure, is that I couldn't run up that hill, and I thought everybody else, not everybody else, but most other blokes are just cruising up, and I thought, well, this is what I'm not good at, so I'm going to go and run it. So an off season, ours generally went for 4 to 6 weeks, where again, as you know, they encourage you not to do anything, but I thought I'm going to go and run this hill. So.
Not in off season.
Off season,
yeah.
Off season when again
time off,
when they want you to stop, and you know how important that is because you punish yourself for the rest of the year. You've got to have a proper break. But instead of doing that, I went and I ran this hill, and if I didn't do it every day, it was close to every day for 6 weeks. And it was a bit of a thing to do. I had to actually work pretty hard to do that because this is a locked facility. I had to matey up with the old bloke who ran the joint. He was a great bloke. I said, mate, I want to sneak in and run these things. Yeah, no worries. So I went out and I ran it. I had no idea. Look, this is, when I tell this story, I think it makes it sound like some genius who worked something out. I had no bloody clue that was going to help me. It just made me feel better that I was doing something. So anyway, I ran it. And that's fine. Get to the end of the 6 weeks and we start pre-season training. So when we ran this thing, it was always at the end of the week, and it was on the Friday afternoon. It was the last thing we did for the week. We did this 10-kilometre run. And all the forwards would run together and all the backs would run together. So the forwards, off we'd go. And so from first grade to Colts, everyone ran together and off you'd go. And I remember driving out that day. I remember driving out to the reservoir thinking, I'm going to learn something here. I'm gonna either work out that I've done something that's really helped me, or that I was the only dickhead who wasn't at the pub. And that's what was in my head, because that's what everybody else was doing. Anyways, we get out there and we start running. Now, of course, and again, you'll understand this, the backs were handicapped because apparently they're quicker and fitter and faster. That's because they don't do any bloody work. So anyway, they were handicapped. So off we go.
Oh, so they start behind.
They start behind us, so we start forward. Because they're going to go through us, right? Anyway, so off we start running. And you know what it's like. Well, you might not understand as much, but you've been in Australia long enough to know the tall poppy shit we carry on with. So you don't want to be the smart ass leading. So I'm running. And, of course, all these other blokes have done nothing. And I'm fit. And I'm running, I'm doing it real easy, and I thought I'm not going to be the dickhead out in front. So I'm just running with him myself. And then the backs come, and they come through us. And I thought, well, I'll just jump on the back of them. Anyway, long story short, 10 Ks later, so it's not a competition, right? But you know, everything's a competition.
Yeah.
Anyway, I won. Beat everyone. Now, what does that mean? Nothing. Means I was the only dickhead not at the pub.
Yeah.
But that gave me my footy career that day. Because that day I realised something, that if I was prepared to work harder at times when others wouldn't, then I could win. And I based everything I did on that day. And every day for the rest of my career, not every day for the rest of my career, but every day off for the rest of my career when we were playing, on that day I'd run.
Really?
And not as much for the physical attribute that you might think, but in the mental stuff. Because from then on, I'd do it on the days off, because it's important. You have to think to yourself, okay, no one else is doing this. I'm doing it. This is an extra. This is the extra. This is the bit that punches you a bit further, right? And so I used to do it on days off and all the rest of it. And when we'd take the field and you see your opponents and all the rest of it, I'd look across and think, you know what? You were resting. Because, basically teams run the same sort of programs. So say it was a Wednesday off. So I'm thinking to myself, on Wednesday, you were resting, I was working. I can be better than you today. Now, did it always work out that way? Of course it bloody didn't. But your body will go where your mind will take it. So if you can convince yourself that you've done more and you're entitled to be better, well, more often than not, you can be. Anyway, to finish this story, I thought I invented this, right? This is what I did. I thought I invented it. But very quickly, like from that point on, very quickly I was in an Australian side going to England. And I'll never forget it because I was so excited. I'd never, never been overseas and all the rest of it. So this is an incredible thing. And we were staying in Leeds. Now, we're talking about your part of the world now, but you know what Leeds is like. And we used to stay in the middle of Leeds, and it's with all the canals and everything that run through there. There's all these running tracks and all the rest of it. So we landed in England, and we had our acclimatisation period, which is, visit every pub we can and see if we can drink them dry. So we got through that. But it was one point, though, because I knew, basically when we would start to train, I picked the day before to think, right, this is the day I'm going to go out and get ahead. And so I got up early. And he was like, get up. Like in England, as you know, and we were there at the end of the year, so it's going into winter, it gets light at 11 o'clock in the morning and dark at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So anyway, I got up early, and it was cold. It was miserable. It was bleak. There was fog everywhere. And I
Perfect.
thought, exactly. This
Beautiful.
Exactly. You miss it, don't you? So anyway, I thought this is the go. This is the right time. And I got out and I was feeling good about it because I'm thinking, you beauty, blah blah blah. This is the stuff that got me to here. This is the stuff that'll keep me here. Now I thought I invented this, right? So they take 26 odd players on these tours. So that first morning I'm out running, I reckon I saw 20 of them doing the same thing, which proved one thing to me. We're talking about superstar players who are just, the best. Like, talent is not enough. Talent has never been enough. Talent, the multiplier for talent is work ethic.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I worked that out. I was brought up as a kid, like I knew how to work, but I didn't know how to work at sport. I didn't have any clue about that. But that's why I had a footy career. And once again, and I will precursor this with, look at my career. I wasn't, I worked hard. That's why I was good at what I did. And let's make no mistakes about that. Talent wasn't my thing, but work ethic was.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember listening to I think it was Floyd Mayweather, who is one of the best boxers of all time. You know, whatever you think of him, his record speaks for itself. But remember hearing him say, "I train when others don't. I train when others don't," and that's what the message I'm getting from you.
But think about that, and these are the less tangible things we get to take with us as professional people, as professional athletes rather, when you go into the world and go into other occupations and other things. You still got to do it. You still got to work when other people won't. Get up earlier, be working earlier, work later, all the things. Successful people, that's what they do. If you drill down into anyone who has done anything, and I'm not talking about success being related to sporting success and financial gain. I'm talking about blokes who raise good families and are good people. They always do more, always. That's what success looks like, because we're all blessed with a certain amount of something. And you know, in the way that our societies and lives are set up, if you do the bare minimum, you'll be okay. But you know, and if that's fine by you, that's fine. But if you want more, you got to work more. And that's a simple formula. And I'm glad that I probably always knew that from the way that I was raised and what my mum and dad were like. But that day at that gap, after mistakenly coming across it, I'll never stop being grateful that happened, because then I took it into everything else I've ever done. And everything else I've ever done, I've had at least a modicum of success, because I realised to be good at it, I just had to work hard at it, and even harder than I thought I would.
Yeah, just put effort into it, and that first moment is incredibly hard. But I guess it was never easy, but you became more comfortable running that gap, right? I'm assuming that was the case, where it was more of a you weren't as gassed as the first time you did.
No,
you were comfortable in the uncomfortable, right?
But it's more the mental conditioning, because physical stuff, you know, the club makes sure you get that. You do enough. If you simply turn up and do what they make you do, you're going to get fit. So what comes out of doing extras is mental toughness, because you just got this thing in your head that I've done more, I'm entitled to be more. Sounds a bit arrogant, but that's what it is. And all the best players I ever played with, and the Darren Lockyers of this world, players with that sort of skill, they also worked and did a lot of extras. That just told me that what I discovered by accident was actually the right thing.
Yeah. Well, you speak of some of those teammates. Your front row partner, Petro Civoniceva, is he? You guys dominated for such a long time. Did you feel as though you really complemented one another in that front row?
Yeah, we were totally different sort of front rowers, really. Not that front rowers can be that different, but he was a big, tall, rangy, athletic, well put together bloke. I was the opposite, and so I'd sort of bash and barge, and then he'd also be able to bash and barge. But I sometimes felt like I could sort of smash an ugly hole, but then he could then make it look a bit better. And we had that understanding. And also he was just a magnificent defender. I was a messy defender. I could get him down, but Buller could hit him and make him stay hit. I just threw everything at him. But in that, and the other thing, you know, why he and I think were able to have a good partnership is, you know, he's a very, very good person. And I think that's the other thing. I know very few good footballers, who aren't good blokes. I think the two things go hand in hand. I really think it's a rarity when you find a human being who's not a good human being being able to be good at a game like ours, because you need the good traits of humans to be good at our game.
Well, you get weeded out.
You do.
You get weeded out.
And at our joint, mate, you got weeded out pretty quick, because we were, you know, from top down, there were good blokes running us, and they just would not tolerate it, because it was that stuff. Once you start understanding clubs and groups of people, any group of people, you know, you get the bad ones, they're cancer. You got to get them out.
Yeah, you do, absolutely. Was he your favourite front row partner?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Another bloke though, like when I say favourite, I've got a few favourites if you like, but Andrew G was another one. No, unfashionable footballer, but just one of these blokes. He was never a great trainer. He was never this. He was never that. But he crossed that line, and I never met a more competitive bloke. He had our tackling record at the club, like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, like for doing 75 and 80 tackles in a game. And you watch him at train, you think he couldn't do 20. But he just was ultra competitive. And like the likes of with him and Buller and like blokes like Brad Thorne, that in our era, that's how we went to work. And that's how all the good teams are. And it wouldn't be any different today. You get a good group of forwards who are all on the same page, wanting to go to work, roll their sleeves up and get the ugly stuff done. That's what our game is. You get that right, give the backs some room, they score tries, get all the plaudits and reward, and we're all happy.
Yeah. Just on that, and I'm interested because Gordon was asking me to ask you this.
Okay, this is going to get interesting now.
You've got all these forwards going on. You've got the superstar teams that you've played in. You're looking to win the game. Who do you want the ball in, the hands of the ball to be in?
The same bloke he would have said, Alfie Langer. Mate, if we were blessed to play in the era that the Broncos were when we were there, it's because he was there. Mate, never seen anyone like him. Never going to see anyone like him again.
You don't want to go over to Wendell. You want Alfie with the ball in it.
Yeah. Mate, he might get to Wendell with the ball, but when you need the play created, you want him having the ball. Then you want all these other superstars that we had. We had Lottie on one wing and Wendell on the other. You had two front rowers who could run like 10 seconds flat for 100. So, but to get that done, you gave the ball to Alf.
Yeah.
He's the best, and look, if you look back, he should be an immortal, in my opinion. And not a lot of people are going to agree with that, but people who played with him will say that.
Yeah.
Because he was just incredible. And he did things that he didn't have the silkiness of a Darren Lockyer. And Darren Lockyer developed more of this later in his career, but he had that killer and that ability to get something when you needed it. That's what the really talented players have got, and he had it in spades. And no surprise for me to tell you that he is one of the best blokes I played footy with. And just everything that epitomises what we like in a bloke, he's got it in spades.
Well, he certainly looks like he knows how to have a good time as well.
Yeah, no, he's good at that. He's very good at that. No, he was, and I'll always count myself as fortunate that he was my captain for a great part of my career. And at the start, when you're most impressionable in your career, I was like he was our captain, and then you had blokes like Kevy and Mick Hancock and Peter Ryan, Alan Cairn, all these blokes who were just footballers. And real no-nonsense, humble blokes who just got on and did their stuff. And I was so, you always got to count yourself fortunate where you start and where you land, because that's what ultimately the type of, you get shaped by what's your club's about. And we had a club that was all no-nonsense, work hard, play hard, loved it.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk to you about AG1. Now, this is a product I've been taking for over a year now, and I absolutely love it. It gives me all of my daily nutritional needs in one easy drink. All you have to do is put in 1 scoop of AG1 into a nice cold glass of water, and you are set for the rest of the day. The cupboard has been cleaned out of tablets and powders because all my needs are met by AG1. The power of routine cannot be underestimated, and we all know how small habits lead to big wins. Some of those big wins for me have included better gut health. My clarity, especially in the afternoon, has improved so much. Gone has the mid-afternoon slump. AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement. Now, as humans, we all share that same basic foundational needs. That's where AG1 take care of everything. This supports your body's needs like nutrient replenishment, gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. AG1 is the supplement I trust to provide the support my body needs daily. And that's why they've been a partner and I've been a user for so long. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1, a buy-round exclusive. If you try AG1, you get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/buy-round. That's drinkag1.com/buy-round for our exclusive Australia-wide offer. Check it out.
Speaking of toughness, you had your arm broken and you elected to continue to play. Just how bad was that?
Well, okay, I often think this gets overstated because it was broken. You can see it on an x-ray, it was broken, all right. Okay, big deal. It wasn't. Didn't need to be pinned. Didn't need any of that. It just was broken.
Was it painful?
It was painful, but not unbearably so. Look, understand this, and I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it because it was a broken arm, and I decided to play, but not for any other reason that I felt like we were going to get there that year, and I just wanted to be part of it. And in that is quite a sort of selfish thing, to be honest, because it doesn't matter if and you think about it like this. So what, am I that special that I need to get past this broken arm because we can't win without me? Because that's sort of what you're saying if you decide you're going to do something like that. I didn't think like that wasn't the way I thought. I thought, well, okay, I'll have a crack at seeing if I can, work with this. Wayne asked me to he didn't ask me, but you knew it was, if you're part of our team, it was your job to try and make sure you could be part of the team every week in terms of injury and all the rest of it, but turn up and do your job. And that was ingrained into me by then. And I thought, right, I'm going to try and do my job by getting over this as quick as I can. And I got to a point where they sort of thought, well, okay, you can have a crack at this. And actually it was the preliminary final. And I'll never forget it because we'll never forget it. The great Ron Massey was there. May he rest in peace. He was good mates with Wayne Bennett. And Mass was a great eater. He used to come, we used to stay at Bondi at the Swiss Grand. And Ron Mass would come down for breakfast. And I was fascinated by him because he could eat. He could eat a lot. And it was great. I used to sit with him. I loved him. He was such a good bloke. Anyway, Kevy was captain. Wayne was there and Mass was there. And I'd come down with the team because I'd been training. I hadn't played. I'd been training all the rest of it. And I thought I was trying to get ready for the grand final. That's what I thought. And then Wayne ambushed me at breakfast with this. So I was sitting there and we were sitting there later because I like to talk to Mass and that. So it was Ron, Mass, Wayne, Kevy had stayed, it was me. And then he said to me, well, what are you going to do? I said, what do you mean what am I going to do? He said, well, you're not playing in the grand final if you don't play on Sunday. And I thought, I did not know I did not know that was a precursor. He said, well, mate, you can't. He said, so you need to decide whether you're playing or not. You need to decide now. So I started sweating bullets. Kevy laughs about this because they're all trying to talk me into it. And I said, listen, I'm not worried about playing with it. I just don't want to go out there and break it in the first 5 minutes and then leave us one down.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, you can win. You can win with 16, but if we lost with 16, I'd feel like I did that. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how can I do this? And the great and sage Wayne Bennett offered me this advice. He said, well, listen, if you do this, and you play with this broken arm, you'll be lauded as this hero and tough bloke and all the rest of it. He said, you'll get to do that by yourself. He said, but if you do it and it doesn't work and your arm breaks and we lose, he said, you'll get to do that by yourself as well. I said, well, that's good, Wayne. Thanks for clearing that up. I said, I'll play. And so I played. Oh, jeepers, creepers. That was Wayne, though, see, and he was right. He's absolutely right. But not many people will say things like that anymore. Not many people want to put the truth as the truth is. And that was the truth because I played and it worked. And so people ask me about my broken arm playing in the grand final with a broken arm forevermore. So I get to do that. Yeah. And equally, had it gone the other way, that would have been the case as well. Yeah. So he was right. Anyway, look, I played pretty well in the preliminary final. I played shit in the grand final because the grand final was actually harder. It was harder to get up for that because I'd played with my arm and I'd spent so much mental energy trying to do that the next week I was flat as a tack. And I contributed in the final in as much as I stood in the line and made sure no one come through me, but I did not play well. So that's the other rider I say to people, watch the game. I wasn't that good.
Did you do your 10K run that week? Grand final week? I love that. I love that.
Well, mate, that was the point.
Yeah.
The point was you had to do it.
Yeah. Just skipping to your very final game, you got the fairy tale finish. But you'd only just turned 32. For a guy that was probably still very capable. Why did you hang your boots up then?
So, mate, when I was maybe 15, again with my best mate that I moved to Brisbane with, we were doing time trials on his dad's ag bike, so motorbike, but farmers don't look after their bikes. Anyway, so we were doing time trials in a gravel quarry between our two properties. Anyway, he beat me And I was furious about it. So anyway, we had to go down through this gully and out up the other side and everything. And, of course, this motorbike had no brakes. So you had to sort of nurse it through that. Anyway, so I got on to do my lap because he beat me and he was into me about it and I had the shits. So I pushed a little bit too hard. And when I fell off going through this gully, my right knee, I fell onto a point of a rock. And I hit it and it carved a big hole out of my knee, on top of my kneecap. Had this great big hole in my knee, if you like, and I didn't think I'd done anything to it. Anyway, so it healed and I never thought about it again. But what it had done, it had fractured all the cartilage underneath my patella. And again, that didn't come back to haunt me. Like my knee got creaky and crackly after that, but I didn't think about it. Anyway, when I first was at the club, I dislocated my kneecap. You know, it's like when you dislocate something, you see it go, like you dislocate a finger, the first thing you do is you pull it, you're trying to get it back in. That's your first reaction. So I saw my kneecap sitting out on the side of my leg and I hit it. And when I did that, it went back over the bone and it tore all the cartilage off. And I remember I went to the doc because I had to have an arthroscope to get him to take it all out. And he said, mate, there's nothing in this knee. He said, you'll be lucky to play for another 12 months. Or play for another 12 years. But here's the thing. And Peter Myers, the esteemed orthopaedic surgeon who's always looked after us, he'll tell you, like I used to have a little bit of swelling in there all the time because he said what had happened, because I had various arthroscopes after that, the surfaces of my bone became polished and it worked and it still works today. So between the kneecap and the bones, it became like polished bone. And a little bit of swelling that was always in it made it sort of lubricated. And he always had doctors coming over from overseas and he'd show them my knee. He said, have a look at this, and he explained to them what was going on. Anyway, I got to a point, it started to get to a point where it was starting to wear on me a bit. And I knew one day, and I know I was early to retire and I didn't want to retire, but a couple of things. It was explained to me the damage I'd done to my knee, I'd managed it all the way to 32. But in the next few years, as I got older, the damage would possibly become worse quicker. You know, like as you get older, doing the same things that you did when you're 22 has a greater effect, if you know what I mean. And I always wanted to go back to my farm. That's all I ever wanted to do. And I didn't want to be a cripple. And I didn't want to have to get a new knee too early and all the rest of it. So I made a decision that I was going to stop then so that I could keep going physically. And it was the right one because I've still got my same knee. It's still managed, it's sore, but it still works. And the other thing that I knew it was time, do you know it's like when you do like shuttle runs and that at training, and you know how important it is to get to the line. Like that's a mental thing. It's got nothing to do with finding the line, but everything to do with doing all the little things right. You know how important that is. I just found myself once or twice pulling up short because I couldn't keep up anymore because it was starting to hurt me. And I was so determined that I didn't want to get left behind. I just found myself once or twice pull up short, and I thought this will manifest itself, and I'm potentially going to start doing this more and more, and I knew it was time to go, and it hurt. Don't worry about that. It hurt to do it because I felt for the next 3 or 4 years I felt like I'm fit enough and strong enough to be still doing this, and yet I wasn't. But that's, you know what? As you get older, you realise footy's just footy, massive part of my life. But the bigger part of my life has been, I've had my family, I've had all of this, and just about everything's gone right for me. So I've got nothing to whinge about and everything to be happy for.
I know, but like you're a long time retired, and to be still performing at the level that you were, that it's a very selfless decision as well. And you even think to the offers that would have been on the table to go to England, maybe some of the Sydney club or whatever it may be.
Well, it possibly could have been and would have been, but mate, I remain content with the decision, to be honest, because you're alive for a long time, and footy's a very short part of that, and so I'm not. I don't feel like I sometimes think about it. But I don't feel like I miss much. I would have loved to keep going. And blokes like Thorny and Big Pet were still playing, and I just would have liked to have finished playing with them properly, and I couldn't. I probably could have, but then I probably wouldn't. I'd probably have a prosthetic knee by now. Yeah. It's that simple. And that was the decision I had to make. So big deal. You know what? if I think about the context of everything that went right, I got nothing to whinge about.
No,
and I'm not going to whinge about it.
No, absolutely not. Mate, we've spoke about some of your teammates. How about opponents? Is there anybody in particular that you relished going into battle against?
Not really.
You just...
Mate, they were all good. Didn't matter who you looked across the other side of the field. I knew how hard they'd worked to be there. I knew how hard they were working to stay there, and I just respected all of them in equal amounts. Of course, they're standout players in every club, and you know about them, and you know it's going to be tough. But they were every week. Every week there was someone else you had to run into. So no, I never really had any ongoing rivalry with any sort of players. Well, I just wanted to get out and do my job and do it, and not. No, because a lot of that's bullshit as far as I'm concerned. And I respected everyone who was there because I knew what they'd done.
Were you aware much of the opposition? Because
so you've been talking to Tallis again, haven't you?
I'm just...
No, I wasn't, and quite often got caught out. Okay, so like Luke Bailey, who broke my arm, right? So he was playing, and like he'd break my arm. We were playing for St George. He was playing for St George rather. Anyway. I sort of knew who he was, but then I didn't understand his name and all the rest of it. So this came off as being very disrespectful because I think it was the next year he made Origin, and they asked me, "Oh, what do you think about Luke Bailey?" And I didn't really, I didn't know who he was, and that wasn't me being disrespectful. It was just that I wasn't a bloke who watched the game. I just played the game, and anyway, so then of course. And I didn't think about this either. So it's Origin. And I said, who's Luke Bailey? It came off exactly as the press wanted to. Because, of course, what did they do at the press conference in New South Wales? Shane Webcke said, who's Luke Bailey? So then Luke goes, who's a great bloke. He goes, well, he ought to know me. I broke his arm. So, I mean, that was, again, and Gordy would have told you this, it was not a disrespectful thing in me. I just didn't, like when I had spare time, I'd go to my farm and do stuff with my sheep, my fence and all the rest of it. I didn't watch footy. And then sometimes Benny would say in meetings, and I'll tell you this because Gordy would have told you, but Benny would say in meetings about these players, I wouldn't know who they were.
Well, I hate to break it to you. He didn't tell us that story. He spoke about something at the Coogee Bay.
Oh my God, why would I do that?
I think you must have been picked for an Australian team, and you're like, who are these blokes? And you're like,
that went on. Anyway, I've explained that to you.
Teammates.
I've explained that to you, and that's how it was.
It's funny that because obviously being as dedicated as you were, you do all this extras away, and there's another element of extras of like knowing your opposition, knowing what's coming at you. But you would just
See, I don't get into all of that, mate.
You're not a subscriber to that.
Because what are they going to do, mate? Like, if you do your job right, you think about it. And being in the front row, I can understand how playmakers watch all that stuff. I get that. But for me, like front row, my job never changed. Didn't matter who we were playing. I had to do the same thing, and you had to do it the same way. And if someone and all players have got something that's different and better and all the rest of it, and provided that your mates do your job beside you, saying defensively, because that's what you'd be watching. You say, okay, do they step off this foot? All that bullshit. But mate, you got me mates beside me, and this is the confidence that we had in each other, I suppose, too, and the confidence that I felt with those blokes. I thought if I stuff it up and he goes and he steps one way, Paddy's going to be there. He'll clean him up, or Thorny will be on the other side. He'll get him, and then I'll know. And then I won't do it the next time. And arguably, and Wayne would probably say this because we'd watch videos. Obviously, they'd bring videos, and so here's me saying you don't think you need to, but the greatest coach of all time, Wayne Bennett, used to show us videos. So obviously, it's important. But I didn't take much notice, to be honest. That's ridiculous, I know, but that's how it is.
It would clearly work for you. How was it for you being coached by Wayne? Did he give you much messaging around your job, or he
mate,
didn't have to talk too much?
The benefit of Wayne is he understands, and well, not the benefit, his gift is understanding people. He knew what made me tick, and he worked it out real early, and he basically let me be. And he knew when he had to give me a touch up in terms of, if I was falling off a bit or doing something wrong, he'd tell me, and he knew he just had to say it, and I would fix it, or at least work my ass off to fix it. I didn't need, he worked that out with me very early on, that was the way. And so he'd tell me something, and I'd listen, and I'd respect it, and I'd go and do it. And that's Wayne. Wayne, I'll be forever grateful for him for many, many things. And you know, like, I needed someone in my life. When my father was killed, at exactly that time, I am lucky that Wayne was there, because, you know, no one will ever compare to my dad, and no one, and he would never say that either, Wayne. But he was like that for me. I needed someone to talk to, and I'm lucky it was him that I had to talk to about things and simple things, not a lot of things, but he's one of the most remarkable, decent human beings I know, and. Like, if I'm grateful that Alan Langer was my captain, I'm even more grateful that Wayne Bennett was my coach for so many things. I wouldn't have got there without him. That's a fact.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure to be coached by him for England. It wasn't as long as I would have liked, but he had a lasting effect on, I think, every player that he's ever played with. I still speak to.
He's pretty economical with his words, isn't he? Doesn't waste a lot of them.
Yeah, the beauty is the simplicity of it.
Well, this is Wayne's big mantra, I suppose, and it's something I've tried to sort of emulate. Is you know, most things in life aren't that complicated. We complicate them because we somehow feel like the human thing is to this is an important issue, so therefore it must be complicated. But most things aren't. And when you can keep, you know, and that's where I think when all around a panic, and Wayne doesn't. And again, you think about the good military leaders in the world. That's what they are. They don't panic under pressure, and that's because they keep it simple. And so, if I learned anything from Wayne, it was about just keep it simple.
Yeah. Matt, away from the Broncos, you played in plenty of Queensland and Australian sides. Did you enjoy those tours with the Australian teams?
Loved it. I absolutely loved. Again. Well, you know, and I don't think about my footy career much at all. It's ancient history, really. But on days like this, when I'm talking about it, some of my fondest memories are the years that I played for Australia, and we were going to England almost every year. And I don't know why that was the case, but it was. And when you blokes were at the top of your game, sort of, I think, you know, the combination of there have been enough players playing in England from NRL standard, your standard came right up, and we had some really tough battles, like some test series where we won, but we only just won it. And you had to play all the way to the end. That's what I think you started to work out is about, you know, particularly in that test arena, you got to go all the way to the end. And so yous had got that, and the battles we had were monumental. But it also, now this is a very abstract story. So when I was a kid growing up, we didn't have a lot of television coverage. We had one commercial station and one, the ABC. The ABC used to carry a lot of shows from England, just for whatever reason. And one of them was a show called All Creatures Great and Small. And it was about a vet in Yorkshire. And so I watched this all of my life, right, and I loved it. Like, my dad loved it, and we would sit and watch it as a family. And so Yorkshire, right? So when we got to, and when it worked out, we're in the north of England. This is where this is. So what I used to do, I'm a nerd. So I got the team liaison bloke to hire me a car so I could drive out to these places where this was filmed. I'd go out there and look around. Mate, I love England. I love England. And so, it was twofold. I love the footy, and it was great being away in that camp atmosphere. And Chris Anderson was our coach for most of that, and he was brilliant. He was the best representative coach I had, actually, because he knew that he didn't have to teach an Australian side anything. He just had to make sure that we did what we were supposed to do. So we were allowed to play up a fair bit, and, you know, the old play hard, drink hard, play harder. And so that was fine. He didn't care what we did, but we had to turn up. When we had to turn up and train, we had to turn up and train, and we had to turn up and play. You made sure you played, and we need to win. And that was the way that we thought. And so those tours were incredibly enjoyable. But it let me look at the country where All Creatures Great and Small was filmed.
Well, it's a
See,
little
there
bit,
you go. See, yeah.
Well, it's a little bit different when the England sides come here. We go to Ramsey Street. Mate,
see, there you go.
Mate, because,
there you go.
Mate,
Same thing, opposite direction.
You grew up watching All Creatures Great and Small. I was obsessed with Neighbours, like obsessed with it.
Really?
Yes, loved it. So when me and my two mates lived together, we wouldn't dare watch it without each other. Like we had it recorded because Neighbours as well. This is how big Neighbours was. Wow. Mate, it was on the same episode, BBC One, so the premier channel. It was on at 1 o'clock, and then at 6 as well. It repeated at 6. But we were so far. We were like 3 months behind. But me and my buddy, like my friends, we could see if it had been watched, and it'd be like, "Hey, what are you? Why have you watched it without me? What are you doing?"
So okay, let's just drill into this a bit.
Mate, Neighbours versus All Creatures Great and Small.
So All Creatures Great and Small is about men and farming and proper soul to the earth, raw, rugged country people, tough people, right? Neighbours is about a neighbourhood where they go to the cafe and.
Mate, but there's more to it than that. Harold Bishop.
Oh, Harold Bishop.
Bishop.
Of course.
He supposedly drowned in his swimming pool. They couldn't find the body, and 3 years later turns up. He'd lost all track of time. Mate, brilliant storylines. Brilliant. Carl Kennedy still. Mate, Carl Kennedy.
I don't know who you're talking about.
You don't know. So he was the doctor in Neighbours, and he used to tour with his band, and he was because Neighbours was so big in England.
Yeah, right. So this is the head that Sam Burgess broke his cheekbone on, one that used to watch Neighbours.
Yeah, oh, mate, absolutely. I'm very, very proud of the fact that I watched Neighbours. Mate, you watch All Creatures Great and Small.
But All Creatures Great and Small, it's about a real vet who wrote books. Mate, it's based on truth. Anyway, that's good. I've learned something about James Graham today. Holy smokes.
We've digressed. Mate, but so one of the things I wanted to ask you about the tour, you wouldn't go after the terror attacks. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
Oh, this is one thing that does shit me, to be honest. I'll tell you exactly what happened, right? So this is 9/11 when all that stuff happens, right? We all know what happened. So we were the first Australian side, but I think probably in the world, who had to make a decision about going overseas, right? And so it had all happened, right?
Yes.
And there was great uncertainty about what all this meant. Remember the horror of it, mate. They flew planes into two of the biggest. It was an attack on the world, if you like.
Yeah.
So it was huge, but I wasn't that concerned about it at all. But the ARL were. And anyway, they talked to us, and we all agreed, well, if they tell us it's all right, we'll go. Big deal, no problems at all. But at some point, they decided, they changed their mind. And they said, no, we're going to go now. But in the interim, they had said to us, listen, we're going to cop some for doing this, because they said, at some point, we had a meeting, all the players, and they decided, okay, we're not going to go. But what we're going to need is you blokes to give us a hand, because we're going to cop it. We need players to be in the papers and in the media backing up this decision, so we look unified and all the rest of it. So I actually wrote it for the Courier Mail, an impassioned account of what was going on. And just say, listen, it's not about cowardice. It's not about any of that. There's great uncertainty in the world. We play sport. We're not going to war to help people.
Yeah.
So we play sport. And so the ARL made a decision, and with our blessing, that we're going to put this off and leave it be. And then, of course, I didn't understand what that would do. But, of course, then it polarises people. There's the people, who want to send you feathers and that through the mail because you're a coward and won't, nonsense stuff, really. And I'm not worried by stuff like that. And I thought, well, okay, I know why I've done this. I know I was asked to do it and all the rest of it. Fast forward another week's time, they changed their mind. And I said, well, okay, that's fine, but I can't. I said, because what did I write in the paper? Have a look at it. Have a look at it, what I wrote and how impassioned I was about it. Oh, suddenly that doesn't count? Suddenly I can just change my mind? I remember Freddie Fittler rang me, and he wasn't begging me to change my mind. He said, mate, what are you going to do? I said, mate, Freddie, I can't. I'm not going to do this, because what's going to happen is, what credibility do I have? I was asked to state this. I stated it. I believed it at the time. I said, now everyone's suddenly and it was because the ARL got ridiculed for doing it. And so they just folded. Oh, no, we'll go then. We'll go then. So I'll never forgive him for that. I'll never forgive him for it. I'll tell you why. Because I love playing for Australia, mate.
Yeah.
That was the most important thing. That was more important to me than playing Origin.
Really?
I loved playing for Australia. I'm a proud Australian. I came from country Australia, and it just means a lot to me, right? So they robbed me of the opportunity to be on that tour. because on a principle I wouldn't, and that is what happened, and I will refute any other version of it other than that, because that is what happened, and I'll never forget it, and it's etched in my very mind because of what they took from me because of that.
I can tell speaking to you about how.
Nah, that was wrong. That was just wrong, and it's about people without principle, to be honest. And I'm not attacking the players, and I understand why they changed their mind, and that's fine. That's their decision. But I was brought up to be principled, and so the principle is that I'd said all of this, and suddenly a week later it's not true because everybody was putting pressure on you. It was as weak as water.
Oh man, that's poor, that isn't it?
It is poor. And look, I don't hold anything personally against anybody about it, but just the notion of that. And it can't be undone. So big deal. But I'll never forgive them for it. Not for that. And when I say them, it's the mass of it. But yeah.
But on that, with playing for Australia, why do you think it doesn't seem to hold the same level of prestige as what it did for your generation?
I don't know.
It's sad, really, because I used to love watching those tours. Yeah.
I don't know.
Has Origin got too big?
That's probably what it is, I think.
Sorry, not too... not too big. No. But has it just become...
It just got bigger.
It's out.
Got enormous. And it's outgrown. It's so catches the imagination of this country that it sort of has overshadowed the international game, and that's a fact. And look, it is what it is. And the international game could come back. Look, and I just think of the Pacific nations and everything that they just played now. I think you'd look at that and it's successful, and that's the way to build it. You're just going to have to keep working at it. And I'm a big believer in the international game because of my own memories and what it meant to me. I guess, like for me though, I grew up in a small country town where it was like a timber town. So we had sawmill and we had sheep. And mate, two very, very Australian things, timber and wool. And so I had this great appreciation that, I lived in Australia. And when I put that Australian jersey on, and the same can be said for playing for Queensland, but when I put that Australian jersey on, I thought like I'm representing everything that is the most important to me. And so when I put that on, I thought, I really was thinking about how important Australia was, and to go out and play for it and have the honour of that in the game that I love, God, it meant a lot to me. And it surprises me how much it does mean to me, but that's why, is because I just was brought up in what I think is quintessential Australia. Australia's a very rural place. We were sort of built from the inside out, if you like. So our rural base built our cities. And so I feel a keen appreciation that I grew up in that world, in that rural world. And so when I was representing Australia, I thought I was representing that. And all these wonderful people I know, such hard workers and good, tough Australian people. And I thought, I'm representing them. What an honour.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, man. Like, it takes me back thinking about standing there singing the national anthem in
Absolutely.
Ireland, thinking about what it meant to be English.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's the same thing, mate. And that's what I feel that all patriotic people feel, And I used to, you got to remember this. This is as an Aussie. So I grew up when our national anthem was "God Save the Queen." So we'd sing that at school. So when you was singing your anthem, it's sort of then we'd sing "Advanced Australia Fair." We got it twice, mate. No wonder we beat you. We had two national anthems.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Ashes, I think there's an Ashes series over here in 2 years' time. So hopefully it's back on the map.
I hope so. I never feel like it works as well here.
Yeah. I guess you're not on tour as such.
Yeah. But also, it's our summer. And it's just, summer's starting when it just, unfortunately for the international game, footy sort of knocks off Grand Final day in Australia. It really does. You know that. And it's sort of like anything that comes after that, you only really get the really glued-on supporters who want to be part of that. And that's why Origin works so well. And Origin will never be played anywhere other than the middle of the season. That's just how it's always going to be. So our problem for our international game, and that's why, it works because we go to play in your winter. I always feel like that's what works best. But if you think you're going to grow the game, well, you got to have it here from time to time. But it's never going to work in our summer. It's never really going to capture the imagination, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess the prestige of it all, or if it was a regular occurrence, it's on the calendar. If it looks important, it will be important to the people. So if it was not too dissimilar to like they do with the Lions Tours Rugby Union.
Yes.
If it's every 4 years, that the English team are coming here.
Yes.
It's something that the people can get
that's
behind.
Right. You're exactly right. They need to build an event out of it.
Yes.
Like Origin is. Once you do that, and you got to capture people's imagination.
Yeah.
With it. You got to give it something that gives it a bit of gravitas. And you don't want it all the time. So you're right. Every 4 years, and you build that event into it.
Make it special. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, what do you make of the current game, the modern day game today? Do you think Shane Webcke at excel?
Oh, I don't know. You have a look at some of these front rows are getting around. They're like 130 kilos and got motors that won't stop. I don't know, mate. But I love the game. And it's changed a lot since I played. If I think about when I was a little boy and played, the game is almost unrecognisable, but it's still exactly the same. So I'm not from that. There are a cohort of players who lament, the game's changed so much and it's different to when we played. Of course it is. But there's a legion of people who love it now, exactly the way it is. And that's what I always remind myself. As much as I love the bits and pieces about what we used to be able to do, the game's different now, but it's still exactly the same. And I love it. And I admire the blokes who play today. They're tough. They're tough and they're fit. They're tougher and fitter than we were. And that's the natural progression of things. So you would expect that, if you look across the last 50 years, when footy's been televised, you look at it and how much the game has changed. It gets quicker, stronger and faster. And it's always going to do that until a point. But no, and look at the grand final. I think that's one of the great grand finals we saw. So all the elements that make rugby league are alive and well. And I think today's game is as healthy as it's ever been. We're always going to have our challenges in our game. And this is part of the theatre of it, if you like. We're always going to have the challenges about, what's best for it, what looks best, where should the next team be? Should we have a team in Perth? Should we not? Is there too many teams in Sydney? All of that's going to go on forever and ever. And, an expansion is important. Like, by definition, if you stand still, you go backwards. So a game has to be proactive. And I love the fact that they're taking those games to Vegas next year. I think if there are a cohort of people who will get our game if we do it right, it'll be Americans. They will love what we do. But it'll take. It's not. You just can't take 2 games there and think, they'll fall in love and suddenly we got a niche over there. We could have a niche there, but it's going to take a lot of work to get it. And then you got to think about, okay, do we put energy into that when we have a floundering international game, if you like, in terms of our traditional sort of partners in that in England and then the emerging Pacific nations, how strong rugby league is in a place like PNG. There's a lot to be excited about, but there's a lot to put together. And that's how I'm a fan of Peter V'landys. I think he's visionary, and that'll mean he'll get ridiculed from time to time because visionary people have big ideas, and sometimes they're too big. And I think he could be that bloke sometimes. But I love that. I love that he's willing to try things. I think that's important. It won't all work, but if you're not trying, you're not finding.
Yeah, I agree. I think the game's in magnificent hands, and I'm with you. I like what we see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's elements to it. You think, maybe change that or whatever, but it's in pretty good shape. The future for you, what's the future looking like? Is it going to be back on the farm? Would you ever consider like a coaching role?
Anyone who knows me, Jimmy, will tell you that I will never be a coach.
Why? Because you seem like you can...
Mate.
Well,
to be a coach, you got to be a Wayne Bennett, right? If you want to be a good coach, it's the Wayne Bennett, Craig Bellamy's of this world, right? And I was coached by both of them. And then Chris Anderson. But, they are able to see grey. I see black or I see white. And if you fall in the middle, I'm going to be confused and I'm going to abuse you. Okay? So I'm never going to be a coach. It's that simple, mate. It is that simple. And anyone who knows me will tell you that.
That's a great analogy. I see things, but because...
Because if someone comes to me, if a front rower comes to me, right, and this will seem cruel, but if a front rower comes to me with something other than the loss of a family member or something like that and says, I'm having trouble, I'm gonna struggle. I'm just not going to be able to put that together for them. So there you go. It's that simple, mate. Well, I just, and
but just speaking to you, you're very passionate about the game. I can still see you've got an interest in it. You obviously played at the highest level. The key ingredients about hard work, discipline. Like, there's a lot for players to take from that.
Maybe I just go and talk to them, but I'm not a coach, mate. You got to know yourself with these things. That's what with coaching particularly. It's a peculiar blend of characteristics that make a coach. I don't have them. Okay, I'm happy in that knowledge, and I know. So I'm never venturing down that path. I'm not a very good newsreader either, but I'm just coping along with that nicely. But I think for me, I probably do a version of coaching, if you like. So my safety talks that I do it's a 25-year thing. The safety talk that I do, and it's about what happened to my dad and the reason that it happened to him. And so I go and talk to people all over Australia actually about it, and I have a notion about what safety is and how to stay safe in dangerous work environments, because there's nothing more dangerous than a farm. Statistically, more people are hurt on farms than anything else in this country. And we're really overrepresented with deaths and things like that. So it's very important to me, that work, and I go all over the place doing it. And so what I'm saying is, in terms of coaching, my coaching, if you like, is I tell this story, and the poignant facts of that help people to think differently about safety, and that fulfills. If I've got any of that want to pass on knowledge sort of stuff in me, that fulfills that. And it's something that I can do, and I don't have to see grey. What I say is very black and white, and it's and more than that, I know it's right. Yeah. And so I can sell that message and sell it with passion, and that fulfills any need I have to coach and impart knowledge, if you like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we're not too far away from wrapping things up, but we've got.
We've still got half an hour.
We've still got half an hour to fill. We've got.
I'm just warming up, really.
You're just warming up. All right. Well, this should get the juices flowing. We've got a section that we do with every guest. The Dream Spine, all thanks to Tooheys. Tooheys are all about teamwork, and we all know.
I'm more of a Forest Gold man, to be honest with you. See, don't you edit that out. Do not edit that out.
Have one of these, mate. They're pretty good.
Sorry, Tooheys.
Yeah, because
look, okay.
Mate, they were hard to get.
Yeah, but I won't disrespect beer. Beer is my friend, and so any beer, all beer. Okay.
All right. Well, we need a Dream Spine.
But Forest Gold is
Forest Gold. All right.
Okay. Don't you edit that out.
No, we won't, will we, Charlie?
Of course you won't.
I think they're a partner, aren't they? They're basically same company, so it's all.
Forest Gold. We love Forest Gold. That's good.
We were actually considering. We acted too late. We were going to ask, because we're in Queensland, should we do the Forest Gold?
You should have.
We stuck with the Tooheys.
Yeah, because we don't drink Tooheys.
No, it's different. You can't. It's not on tap anywhere.
Because we're Forest Gold people, mate.
Anyway, we digress. The Dream Spine. You want
when they say spine, what's the spine again? Like
don't.
Is it? Yeah. No, I know it's like
1679.
1679. Yeah, that's what I thought. No, I know they say spine and that, but all this fancy technology they use now.
Technology.
Well, I just don't like all the bullshit. Like where, halfbacks are halfbacks, not the 7. I mean, that just shits me.
Does it?
Yeah.
Mate,
it's a halfback. The number 8. Oh, it's the prop. Or the fullback. You're 6 and you're 7. You're halfback and you're 5'8". Don't say it for what it is.
5'8" something we'd never say in England. Standoff. Would you not a standoff?
Well, no. I thought that was a rugby union thing. Or was that
fly half?
Well, I don't know, mate. Yeah. Look, you're asking a bloke who didn't know what a spine was, and you're going to ask me, I know what fly half means. But anyway, that's fine.
Like Dream Spine, well, just the one I've got right now. Actually,
yeah.
It's working great.
I'm going to go with, and I thought about this because obviously you gave me a heads up that this was going to get asked, so I had to do some research. But I'm going to go.
All you need to do is think about the play.
I had to do research because I don't remember who I used to play with. But no, I'm going to go with the one that I remember when I first started playing with the Broncos. And so that was Kerrod Walters, Alfie Langer, Kevy Walters, Darren Lockyer.
Not a bad spine. What is it about those guys in particular?
Oh, well, Alf and Kevy, one of the great halfback 5'8" combinations, or 6 and 7 combinations, depending if you want to use the modern jargon.
The modern
They're one of the great combinations. And again, a huge part of our success. And Kerrod was there at the start. He obviously went to the Adelaide Rams and did other things, but he was there at the start. And, mate, he was a very, very good hooker. Very, very good. And sort of, he was probably at the forefront of the modern way of playing hooker, So, but again, what all...
is it hooker or dummy half?
He's a hooker.
Not a dummy half.
Well, he's a hooker in the scrum. He's a dummy half when he's at the play the ball. So you're two things.
You're two things. I'm just checking.
Wow. Yeah, you're not a dummy half when you're a hooker. You are, but when you're in the scrum, you're a hooker. Yeah. But when you're at the play the ball, you're a dummy half. Yeah. You understand that?
Yeah. So if I'm packing down, I'm not the dummy half then.
No, that's not the dummy half then. He's the dummy half when he's at the play the ball.
Can the dummy half change?
Whoever's in there is the dummy half.
Whoever's in there. Yeah. Oh, right. So it's not a number 9.
Don't try and confuse me. Don't do it.
all these fancy terminology.
Well, it is, mate. Anyway.
Either way, it's a pretty handy spine, mate.
Yeah, so that was, and I say that because we had such success with that little, and it obviously had changed and moved around over the years. But when I was thinking about it, I thought that when we had that combination, we invariably won. And Lockie, who obviously started his career at fullback, he was a sensational fullback, and obviously went on to be a very good 5'8" as well. But that combination of players, holy smokes, we had success there. And yeah, so if I was asked to pick a team and that's what I wanted, that's what I'd put in there.
Yeah, nice. Well, big thanks to Tooheys, as we say.
And Forrest Gulp.
Well, Tooheys are all about teamwork, and all good teams need a great spine.
That's a bit of marketing right there. But anyway, that's fine.
It sure is. Yeah. We know where our bread is buttered.
Exactly. Yeah.
If football, I guess we've been into this. If football didn't exist, we like to ask what we think that the guests will be doing. I'm assuming.
Well, it'd been rural, but I guess it's one thing to say that. The pathway to that is usually a family place that you can go and work on and further your career. That was never going to be my thing, particularly what happened to my dad and the way that we were, right? So I don't have to go into that, but I would have had to. I would have found a vocation in the rural world eventually, because that's all I've ever really wanted to do. If I've got passion for something, it's for that. So I would have found a vocation in that, one way or the other. What it would have looked like, I don't know. I love shearing, I love sheep, so I could have been a shearer. That could have been something to do. But yeah, it would have been in the rural world.
Is that way? When you say shearing sheep, is that just taking their hair off?
Okay. Wool, Jimmy. Wool, one of the great natural fibres of the planet. Wool.
It's a bit like a barber, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one way of describing it. But yeah,
you're an animal barber.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah. Wow. Yeah, so something like that. Yeah, definitely, and it would have definitely been something like that.
Yeah, but just quickly, like
we got time, mate. So you don't have to be quick.
What is it like growing up in rural Australia?
Oh, mate, when we grew up in rural Australia, the best. And I describe this to people, and I guess people all think this. If you had a good childhood, you sort of think it. We grew up in a time with a lot of money. No one really had any money. So to think that someone had more than someone else really wasn't things that got thought about that much. I grew up in a small country town.
How many people live in?
300.
300 people.
But then it was probably 200. But full of old families who had been there for generations, who ran sheep or worked in the sawmill, I went to primary school with the same kids all the way through to high school. High school was we had an hour and a half bus run to the town where it was only 30 k's away, but Tom did the bus run, took an hour and a half. But we just grew up with such freedom. We no one had much, But you didn't worry about that because no one had much. So you weren't comparing to anything.
Yeah.
We all thought we were the same. But I used to ride my bike to school, and that's how I became such good mates with my next door neighbour, who's my lifelong best mate, and then other, like that group of kids that I went to school with are still all my mates. And so all of my best memories are made in this little town where we loved life. When I think about it, and I'm probably doing a bad job of explaining it, but when I think about it, they're my best memories. And I love still being part of that community. It's changed. It's an incredibly different place now. But all our memories are still there. And my mates are still in the vicinity and all the rest of it. And we meet up and we go to the pub and love it, mate.
What was it like when you first got to Brisbane?
Oh, mate, I hated it. And I never, ever stopped hating it. Look, if you grow up here, it's your normal.
Yeah.
It was not my normal. And I just never took to it, ever.
Was it just like overwhelming
yeah, and it's just a different world, mate. And it was fun for a while. For a little while it was fun, but it just was so hard. It's just very hard when you're used to a little country town where there's bugger all traffic and it's simple. It's not simple to live in big cities. And that's why I never took to it. And so when I finished playing footy, I moved back to Toowoomba. When I say moved back to Toowoomba, moved to Toowoomba, which is a commutable distance to Brisbane for my work, but also a nice, easy commute to our farm, so I can live between the two, if you like.
Yeah. I've been to Toowoomba, actually, too.
So how'd you go with that? Pretty good?
Yeah, pretty good. Was it the Clydesdales there?
Yeah, right. Did you play up there?
No. I
play a trial or something?
No, I did play a game in Toowoomba, and I was there for a sports lunch not long ago because there's a connection there with the Bulldogs.
There is too, yes. Yeah, no, they've very kindly. I think they've taken on the Clydesdales. Obviously, that's a statewide entity here in Queensland. Canterbury are smart enough. Canterbury are smart enough to know it's a big nursery for juniors, right? Yeah. And so I applaud them for doing it because the Bronx had a few goes at it and all the rest of it, and there's been various incarnations which have not worked. And I've had a little bit to do with that. And purposely because it's very important in country areas to have a visible pathway, if you like. If you want to be a footballer, this is what you do, Because when you're like a kid in Leeburn, and back then all these pathway things didn't exist, it was Leeburn, Sydney. That's what you thought about. Yeah. Sydney's where the big footy's played. And that distance when you're a kid might as well be to the moon. And so when you got something like the Clydesdales, for young players in Toowoomba in the southwest and on the Darling Downs, it's a visible pathway to go and do something. It keeps them, I just know one thing: if we don't have that there, we lose footballers. We lose footballers to other sports. Yeah, and so many people just never end up making it. Like if they've got that ability to get on track, like we miss so many by not having these pathway systems in. There'd be thousands. And we're not, as we do expand, we need more players. Yeah. But also we're missing out on potential greatness. Well, this is the thing, and this is what a game has got to keep growing. There's no two ways about it. But we've got to get better at juniors, because that's if rugby union in this country's got a problem, it's probably in my view anyway, is that they've neglected their junior competitions at the expense of their senior competition, where the opposite is true. If you want your game to grow and get better, you got to have all the top competitions working well, but you have got to have a rock solid scenario for kids to experience our sport, because that's where the future is. The more kids we get, that's why schools are so important. That's why we spend so much time, being in schools and the rest of it. And rugby league's a magnificent game. And, as we've spoken about today, rugby league's a magnificent teacher of things about life, as well as obviously being a sport. And that's why I'm so actively voice my being a proponent for it, if you like, because of that. As much as the sport itself, what it teaches young people is very, very important. Well, and as well, like I know I had, when I was young, I was an impressionable teenager. And thankfully, I had football, and thankfully, I met people that I was an idiot, I was a dickhead. I still made plenty of wrong decisions,
But how many more would I have made had it not been for rugby league? Had it not been for, like, it shaped the person that I am.
Absolutely.
It moulds us. And like we say, by the time you get to first grade, there's no real dickheads because you get weeded
Well,
out.
you're not allowed to, mate.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
You get pulled into line. Look, there's still a few, questionable
Yeah, that's
characters
right.
and
That's
all
exactly
that
right.
jazz.
But in any group of
Yeah.
people, you're going to get that.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for that perfection, you'll be disappointed. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you the other bit that's exciting about rugby league is the women's game.
Yes.
Now they play the way we used to play. They're very they haven't learnt the gamesmanship that you do over the course of all the years that was played professionally. So now they're just raw. I love watching them play, mate. Because they get right into it and just got that nice raw. We're just playing. We're not thinking about how to play. We're playing.
Yeah,
Gee, it's good.
There's very little wrestle involved.
No.
But I just, the unfortunate thing, and it's not to be negative, but it's going to come.
Oh, definitely.
Like,
yeah.
You know
What
it's
I'm
gonna
loving
come.
about it is that it's not there yet.
Yeah.
Because it's
let's enjoy it while we still got it.
exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But they're so good. Like and I and I know we have these issues around. They talk about it's all about gender equality and things like that in society at large, and about payment and all the rest of it, how they equal up the pay and all the rest of it. I do think that the women's game is an enormous vehicle for growth in rugby league.
Oh, mate, massive.
Because it is so entertaining. Now, I wouldn't, if I didn't think it was entertaining, I wouldn't wrap it. I'd just say, well, look, they try, but it's not entertaining. But it is genuinely entertaining.
It is.
And they're genuinely are good to watch. And so, no, I'm a massive fan of it.
Yeah, it's something I enjoy too. We have digressed a little bit, but a sliding doors moment that you think about where the alternative happens. Like for me, it might be the decision to maybe if it had stayed in England, I'll sometimes think about.
Well, Australia would be a better place you had her. But anyway, that's all. I don't know where they come from. Anyway,
mate, during COVID, right? This is how much value I bring to Australia. During COVID, I went back, signed for St Helens to finish playing in England. The government wouldn't allow me to leave.
Yeah, no.
No, I'm legit. I had to reapply and say, I will be back.
Yeah, no, I can see the parallel you're trying to draw. I just think it might be lost in translation a little bit. Anyway,
no, legitimately, they knocked back my visa.
Yeah, no, I understand, mate. I understand. You tell yourself whatever you need to hear, won't you?
Eventually, they let me go.
Yeah.
And then let me back in after 2 weeks in quarantine.
So my sliding doors moment is quite. It's an easy one actually. It's that day in Toowoomba when Wayne came to watch Pricey play and sign me, and it is that simple because I almost didn't play that day. I had been very, very crook, and I almost didn't play. And so, if you think about that, if I don't play that day, I'm probably not here. So, easy.
Did Wayne actually speak to you? Like, how did all that work?
Can't remember.
You just played the game, you won.
Yeah, and then got a phone call, I think. Don't know. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The most interesting person that you've met along the way?
Oh, jeez. I'd probably have to say Wayne, to be honest. He was an enigma when I was younger, and then I got to know him a lot, and now, I'm a middle-aged bloke now, and so now I've known him sort of all through that, and he is the most interesting bloke I know. And it's funny, the older I get, it changes, It's like I went from being like almost a little boy, if you like, but a young boy who was just in awe of him, totally in awe. And then over the years, you get used to him, you get to know him better, you grow up, and then now we can sort of really speak to him as like I'm a man now, and and it changes. But thankfully, and sometimes that changes, and you sort of go separately. But we've gone the other way, and because he loves farming and stuff like that too, so we've got a lot of interest, a lot of common things that when we talk, we don't generally talk a lot about footy. We talk about cattle and stuff like that. So he is genuinely the most interesting bloke that I've met along the way. But excuse me, I would say though, that's the other thing that I love about being fortunate enough to be part of the professional rugby league fraternity in Australia is all the blokes that you meet. Like there's some wonderful people in our game. And you know what it's like. You don't see them every 5 minutes. I for the first time, I went to a Kangaroos reunion the day before the grand final because I happened to be down there. I had to go earlier. And I'd never been to one before. So I went. It was spectacular to catch up with these blokes. And it's funny, isn't it? And I know you'd say the same thing. You you spend a lot of time with these blokes in that younger part of your life. And then, once you get out of it, if you don't stay around the game, you don't see a lot of these blokes very much. But when you see them again, it's like 5 minutes has gone past. And you immediately talk to them and you can relate to them and it's comfortable. It's not like trying to meet someone again for the first time. It's like an old mate. That's what I love. And any time that we've had a couple of grand final reunions and stuff like that, you run into blokes who we have not seen literally for 10, 15 years, and it's like no time's gone past. And that's what I love about it. That's a very unique thing that we share,
I don't know how common it is in other sports.
I don't know. It may well be the same. So I'm not saying it's unique to us, but I just know that's one of the things I really, really enjoy about having been part of all of that. And you don't think about it too much, but then when you run into these blokes, God, that Saturday before the grand final in Sydney it was a spectacular day. Gee, I had a good time. Drank 1,000 beers too.
Isn't it? It is funny. Like I bumped into an old teammate the other week, and I was just like, how good is that? Like seeing you again, and like it is.
And it's funny. It is almost bizarre in a way, but it's like no time has gone past. It always fascinates me. Because I think I go, particularly when I was going to that Rugby reunion, I'm thinking, I'm a bit nervous because I haven't seen a lot of these blokes for a long time. Shouldn't have been. Yeah. Because every single one that I ran into that I'd played with and that, it was just comfortable. Yeah. And I think that's, we ought to be very grateful that we've got that. Because I think a lot of people in life would not know what we were talking about.
I agree. I mean, it's not, if whatever your workplace is, it's usually, I can't envisage, if you're working at a car dealership or whatever. It's not. It's just
that one day that you'll feel like that in 10 years' time. I doubt you would.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? Like even I've had that feeling, not as great a time, but I've had that feeling. But it's a bit weird when you think about it, isn't it? Like it's a strange reaction to seeing an old friend, team, but it's more than a friend, isn't it?
Well, I think that's what it is. If you drill down into it, I think it's because it's very hard to be a professional rugby league player, and so you have that shared bond of working really, really hard toward a singular goal. And I think when you do that, you really get to know people well, and then it never leaves you. But anyway.
It's good. All right. Well, Shane, thank you.
Well, just as a full disclosure, the only reason I agreed to do this is because my son listens to this.
Oh, really?
And he likes it.
Does he?
So that's the only reason I came.
Good on him. Well, he's obviously...
he's a very intelligent
very intelligent.
Yeah. Must be if he's listening to...
Must be.
Exactly.
Like, we can talk some drivel, but...
he said that too.
Yeah. No, in all seriousness, mate, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to sit across and share a mic with you and talk about your story. That it's funny because... I nearly played against you had you not retired. So the Broncos team that won in 2006 played St Helens in 2007.
That's right. I was actually over there.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would have been 20 or 21, but
well, I'm glad I didn't, mate. You want to smash me?
No.
Well,
no, it would have been it would have been a pleasure to share the field with you, but unfortunately, it didn't.
Well, we've shared a microphone, which is, not the same thing.
Totally not the same thing. And on that, we'll wrap it up. But again, thank you so much. I think, speaking to your friends, your teammates, I can really see why they hold you in such high regard. And I think when you have people talking about you like that, it goes past the premierships and the accolades that you get. For you to be, to hear Gordon Tallis, a person I have so much respect for to him to label you the toughest person, the most loyal person, all these great attributes. He told a few funny tales about you as well.
They're good mates, mate, and that's and I value that above all things, is mateship, and that's what our game's predicated upon. So, yeah. But thanks for having me, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.